There's times to hit back and there's times to talk, and right now is the time to talk.
To get elected, Mark Carney called it a trade war. He said it was never going to sit. He was never going to do anything about it. And now he's saying, well, let's just have a nice talk about it. Welcome back to the Canadian Shield. My name is Sterling. As predicted by the Canadian Shield, Donald Trump has moved into phase 2 of his plan to move all the industrial base back to the United States of America and to turn America into a made in America. Our governments, of course, are doing nothing except for Alberta and a little bit in Saskatchewan. Most of the governments in this country are not doing anything to offset the problem. They're running around, pounding their chest, talking a bunch of rhetoric, and hoping that they can beg Donald Trump to change his mind. Of course, he's not going to change his mind. Why would he? He's making a lot of things good for his country. It's unfortunate that Canada doesn't have a prime minister who's got the same attitude. Mark Carney has indicated that he's, looking for other ways to make deals with China. And so that's something that we'll have to cover in a future video. This one, however, apparently the trade war with the United States is not really a war. It's more of a war of words. And Mark Carney feels that it's just an appropriate time to sit down and talk to Donald Trump some more, because we have 85%, tariff free in the CUSMA. I wonder why it was a war 6 months ago, and now it's just time to sit around the table and have a big discussion about it. And that question, of course, we all knew in the Canadian Shield, but the Liberals out there who want to continue to tell themselves that their elbows are up seem to be the people that are leading this country to ruin. We're going to talk about how the Liberals are reacting to the social media storm around the Stellantis move and how politically it makes them look about as strong as a wet piece of paper. Before we get into that, though, I would encourage all of you to check and make sure you're still subscribed. Make sure you still hit the notification bell. And all of you out there that are listening that are not subscribed, to subscribe. Share this with your socials. Let's get into this. To say Melanie Joly's favorite expression, first and foremost, let's talk about this letter that she posted to Twitter that she allegedly wrote to Antonio Filosa, the CEO of Stellantis. Now, let's remember that Melanie Joly has been claiming for months that she's in direct talks with Stellantis, that they call each other right on the phone. She's always just talked to them. Every time she sits down with the media, she just spoke with them this morning. And they assure her that they're going to be looking after the needs of the blah, 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 blah. This letter is not for the individual in Stellantis. This letter is to try to convince her base that she's doing something, which, of course, to you and I means that it's, again, back to just the liberal theater. This is all theater. There's no teeth in any of these actions, and I'll get into that. But I'm not going to read the letter because it's not written for that guy. It's written for me and you. So it's just a press release is all it is. They're trying to convince you that they're doing something and they're fighting for the jobs. And none of that makes any sense. And all of what they're trying to convince you of is about as mature as a 3-year-old. Like there's just nothing in it that has any merit in the real world. It's a fantasy, an immature dream put forward by someone in grade 6 who thought that they were going to go to the practice UN and say a bunch of things, and that was going to solve all the problems of the planet. So we're right back to this. This is what the Liberals have been doing for near on to, what is it now, 11, 12 years? Empty, hollow promises and theater are not going to fix. If they were going to fix Canada's problems, we would not have the amount that we have right now. It's not just Donald Trump. Donald Trump is just the straw that broke the camel's back. Before we hear this clip from Mark Carney where he says something that is completely, it's pretty ridiculous, I'd like to point out the amount of vehicles that this guy travels in and how he thinks it's his importance that allows him to violate all of the green rules that he expects you and I to live by. If you yourself cannot live by them, do not expect it from others. You, in fact, must practice what you preach. This is picked up from CBC when he's getting out of this massive fleet of caravans that are all sitting idle. They didn't turn their engines off, and there's not a hybrid among them.
Good morning, Prime Minister. What's your message to Stellantis?
Good morning. I've already given a statement on it.
Good morning. I've already given a statement on that. And he just keeps walking. He doesn't address them. He doesn't do. Now, appreciate when you see Donald Trump come out of the White House, there's a battery of flashes. There's 55 screaming media trying to get his attention, trying to ask him a question. You know, he gives a wave as he walks to the helicopter and all the rest of that. But he doesn't crack under the pressure. He stands there, he takes it. He doesn't always say what the media wants to hear. And sure, some of them are being pretty hostile and aggressive towards him. But he doesn't run away, is the point I'm trying to make. He doesn't mumble, oh, I already gave a statement, blah, 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 and then put, you know, all these bodyguards between him and the media representative. This is serious body language, guys. This is like, not only did I not stand and answer the question for the camera, but I put two of my heavily armed people between me and that very same camera and the person asking the question, who are undoubtedly two different people, because it's CBC, so I'm sure it's a team, like a cameraman, a boom, and a lady with asking the question. So the idea that he can't stand still because he's already given a statement for that. So I'll give it again. We want to hear it. What do you think that we're going to be like? We want to hear the consistency in your answer. But of course you can't do that because the answer is not something that he thinks you're believing. And so he runs and he runs. And that's something that you need to see, Mr. I'm elbows up. I'm going in the corners. I'm going to be the guy that's, you know, Mr. Hockey player. I'm Mr. Businessman. I'm the guy that can solve the problem with Donald Trump. He apparently has no idea how business works at all. So he was in Toronto making an announcement about a new bill he's putting forward to toughen up on crime, which of course it'd be easier just to repeal the bills you've already put in place. And that would, you know, at least revert us back to the system that was better before you guys messed it up. Nonetheless, I'll not really going to be talking much about that in this video. I would point out one thing, though. All of those people are RCMP officers, and he's standing in Toronto. There's not a lot of officers from the RCMP that are making daily arrests and are putting themselves through the paperwork and all the rest of that. Those are the city police, municipal police, of which Toronto has many. So I don't know why. I get that he's the prime minister, so he has he has an RCMP detail with him all the time. So probably that's really what his motivation is. But inside the city of Toronto, there's not a lot of RCMP officers chasing down break-and enters and whatnot. So I find the juxtaposition to be very strange. Perhaps he didn't feel like he'd get a warm welcome with the Toronto Municipal Police, as they are a union that supports the conservative side of the aisle and Pierre Poilievre. Anyway, he was asked about Stellantis and, of course, or the tariffs and all the rest of it. And the answer is just, it's infuriating, if I'm honest.
With the Americans, we're engaged in deep negotiations, intensive negotiations on several sectors of the Canadian economy: energy, aluminum, and the steel sector. The steel sector.
I mean, there are kids that are never paid attention to politics in their life that understand that, but we've been saying that since March. Since you were, the head of trying to become the leader of the Liberal Party. We know the sectors. We also know that you're doing nothing but talk, and adding deep negotiations or intense it's nothing. You've stood up in the House of Commons and said the exact same thing. You said, Minister LeBlanc was down in Washington, intense negotiations. Face it, man. Donald Trump is not going to give you anything.
It's across Canada, but the bulk of the steel sector is right here in Ontario. And we want to make progress in those negotiations. I'll be briefing the Premier on the status of those negotiations. We'll also be discussing the auto sector, the forestry sector, with the review, following the review of the Canada-US-Mexico trade agreement, which is coming very shortly. So
now all of a sudden Kuzma's just around the corner, and he feels that he's going to somehow why am I the only one that understands that Donald Trump in no way, shape, or form is going to renew Kuzma? There is I did a video, or I did 3 or 4 videos on it because I see what Donald Trump is doing, right? At least I can see it. I don't know why Mr. I'm a businessman can't see it, but I can see it. And I'm here to tell you all about it. Now he's entering phase 2, where he's, ratcheting up more of the tariffs on other industries that he doesn't want, because now in the United States, those industries are what we would call fledgling, right? We were just getting it back up and running, right? You can't just fire up a steel mill overnight. Those fires take a little bit of time to get ready to achieve the heat and all the rest of that, and so on and so forth. So only takes one person to come back to the table for Kuzma and the whole to say that I'm not interested in renewing it, and the whole thing falls to pieces. And it's a review, but if they don't sign off on it, the deal falls to pieces. And I believe it's June 1st, 2026. However, Mark Carney wants you to believe that everything is okay now. Now it's not a war. Now it's not an impending destruction. Now it's not an existential threat to the country. Oh, no. Now that I got your vote, now that I'm in Parliament, now that I got everything from the elbows up crowd, well, it turns out there's no big deal at all. It's not a problem. Relax. Don't worry about it, Doug Ford. Don't worry about it. Thousands of jobs are leaving Canada, but don't worry about it. We are going to look after it come Kuzma. And then when Kuzma gets here, it'll be something else and something else and something else. With the Liberal Party, it always is somewhere around the corner in the distant future. It has been that way since 2015.
The strategy has to take all of that into account. There's times to hit back and there's times to talk, and right now is the time to talk.
Right now is the time to talk. So Melanie Joly's talking to people. Mark Carney's talking to people. Doug Ford, well, he's talking to people. He's talking to governors, he was saying, down there in the States. The Liberals do a lot of talk. There's no action. I see Danielle Smith doing a lot of action. I see Pierre Poilievre doing action, what he can get, what he can do, limited with his position and all. I mean, let's be straightforward. Even the people from the Bloc are doing more than Mark Carney. Let's be honest. The Bloc is moving more. I mean, it's Quebec focused, but they're still doing something. Quebec is getting hit by the aluminum tariffs. And a lot of those businessmen will jump back and forth between whichever political party, because to them, it's no different. They're of the same political stripe, whether it be the Bloc or whether it be the Liberal Party. Though they probably should get wise and vote Conservative, and then the whole problem, many of their problems would disappear. Can't reach everybody, I guess. But Mark Carney, he insists that now, right, so this is amazing in my head. At the beginning of the election, it was an existential threat. Everything was going to burn. The whole country was being attacked by Donald Trump, and he was doing everything short of flying F-15s into Canada and, putting the Marines across the border and this and that. And Donald Trump was just getting started. Now, 6 months later, when Donald Trump is getting to the point where he can initiate phase 2 and really start to lock Canada out of the market that's down there and really pull in all of the skilled trades that are going to be moving from the United States down into America so they can continue to work, Mark Carney says, no, it's no big deal. Don't worry about it. We're going to talk to him about it sooner or later. We're going to get down. We're going to talk about it because Kuzma's coming in the next 8 months. Oh, come on, Canada. I get that you didn't understand any better, but now it's time to understand that there's nothing Mark Carney's going to be able to do except talk and stall and delay and stall and delay and talk and stall and delay. He cannot pull it off. He's not a businessman, guys. He's a corporate raider. Unfortunately for Mark Carney, it seems that somebody who's not in the bought and paid for mainstream media got through the wrangler and was permitted to ask Mark Carney a question about the contract that they signed over the battery plant that's going up in Windsor. And Mark Carney, we can tell here in the Canadian Shield, and you and I, we can tell that the individual asking the question was onto something by the fact that Mark Carney tried to interrupt 3 times. And then when he did start to speak, he got very snarky.
I understand that we're not Prime Minister Dan, but it seems like these contracts are not terribly binding on the automakers.
No.
So is it a mistake to broker deals promising billions to companies to build here, knowing that experience suggests that they can just flee or demand more cash without much in the way of consequences?
Okay, well, first off, I know you're passing on a question. You can pass on this answer back to your editor.
So 3 times, right? He didn't even let her get the question out. One laugh, then there was a no, and then he didn't let her finish the question. So we know right away that the person asking the question is onto something, and the automaker doesn't really have to. And I'll wrap that up. I just wanted to show you the tell, right? The Mark Carney's body language is always that of a child who's being scolded by his mother. Like,
That's not a fair, an accurate description of the contract that the federal government signed with Stellantis and their partner LG.
and their partner LG, South Korean company. You know them. They make monitors and stuff. Well, they also make batteries, and they are heavily invested in Donald Trump's United States. Heavily, like they are putting up power plants in Nashville. Oh my, heavily invested.
There are undertakings in that contract for the Next Star battery that relate not just to the completion of that, but to the undertakings here in Brampton, not far from here. So there is exposure of the company if they were not to follow through with those commitments for Brampton, restarting Brampton, the employment in Brampton, related commitments to their Windsor activities.
Now, we gave millions of dollars to a Swedish company to come in and build electric cars in Quebec. They folded and they took off. There was they broke ground in Kingston. That company took off. There's already 2 or 3 companies that have, taken money from the government, gotten tax breaks, and they have left the country. Now, the thing of it is that currently there's like a $50 million or $55 million payment that the government has given to this Stellantis. And I assure you that there are cost analysis people in this company, this corporation, not just their corporation, but the LG corporation, who are doing nothing but asking themselves, which is cheaper? Is it cheaper to pay the lawyer to make the government sit in court for 2 or 3 years and then pay out whatever little fine that the judge hands down? Or is it cheaper to give the money back? Or it's one thing we can be sure, it's not going to be cheaper to manufacture the battery. That's not going to happen. If that was going to happen, this wouldn't even be a question. It's not going to be cheaper to manufacture the battery in Canada anyway. I mean, we know the corporate tax rates in this country are horrible. And we know that LG and Stellantis are heavily invested in Donald Trump's America. So they're going to ask themselves, is it easier to make it in Michigan and ship it into Canada? Or is it, they're just running all the numbers right now. And Mark Carney talking like that, clearly he understands that the companies can leave in a heartbeat. Now, in this one, I want to expose how the Liberal government and Mark Carney especially are completely disassociated with what these people who are losing their jobs are going through. Completely and utterly disassociated. They have no idea what is happening in the lives of these people. They further have no idea what's happening in the day-to-day of the company itself. And if they do, they're not admitting it because he's about to tell you something that is nothing beyond, well, we're going to wait and see, we're going to stall, we're going to delay, and don't worry about it. We're all going to make sure that they get unemployment. You can't believe the complete separation from the reality and the utter callousness that he displays in this statement.
One, that they're looking at different model being produced in Brampton. That decision would be taken in the context of the finalization of the USMCA, to use the American term, CUSMA, to use our term.
Stellantis is saying that they're going to be looking at putting a new, manufacturing a different car in this Oakville plant, which is in and of itself a very, very, very expensive and time-consuming operation. However, they don't plan on doing it before the renegotiation of the CUSMA, and that will only be if Donald Trump removes the tariffs. And he is not going to do that. There's just nope, he's not going to do that. He imagines a time when the car manufacturing business was in the United States and everybody had a good quality union lifetime job, long before they started to rip it up and send it to Asia, send it to Mexico, send it to Canada. And I have some numbers I can show you to support this contention, which I'll show you at the end here after I let Mark Carney talk a whole bunch more foolishness. I just want you to realize that he's saying, oh, no, they're going to retool it. Maybe in CUSMA, which I just explained to you, is at least 8 months away. And then if they decide in 8 months that they're going to go ahead and retool it, that could take 2 or 3 years.
Negotiations. And as well that support would be provided for workers. We're working with them. We're working with Unifor, working with the province to ensure that those workers for Brampton have more than just the opportunity, and they do have the opportunity to move to the additional shift that is being put on at Stellantis' other facility. But because there's 1,500 jobs coming with that third shift there, but also that they have comparable support to what they receive at present, while the Brampton factory is idle. So.
Now, if you've never worked a union job, let me explain to you what he just said. They are offering 1,500 jobs to the people in Oakville to move to Windsor, which is, I don't know, I think by car, I think if I remember right, it's like 7 hours by car. It's not around the corner. It's far. It's uprooting your entire life. You're not commuting, like every day to get there. It might be even 8 hours. Nonetheless, it's far, okay, from Brampton. On top of that, it's the third shift. So you got to look at this mess, okay? So here's a guy, he's had 10 years seniority in Oakville, and now you want him to work midnights. Third shift. So that's probably in all likelihood, let's call it 6 o'clock till 3 o'clock, and then, so on and so forth. So you're going in at 11 and working, or you're going in at 10 and you're working till 6. I mean, I'm assuming they work a 7-hour or an 8-hour shift. So if you go in there at 10, you got to sell your house in Oakville, move your family to Windsor, where there is no houses. So you might as well invest whatever money you're spending on your house on a trailer, and don't worry about sleeping out in the cold in the trailer, because in the nighttime you'll be at shift. Then they will all of a sudden play in the seniority card, right? And that is holy moly, you don't even want to be around when people start arguing. These union guys get angry about over the seniority and who's going to get what and who had right first crack. And I'm telling you, this gets very, very ugly very, very quickly. Of course, the guy will go to the union rep and say, I was 15 years in Oakville and now I'm here and I want the different shift because I got seniority over this guy. And but then the guy who's like, yeah, but I've been here 13 years and now this is the shift. I waited 5 years to get it and now I have it, and you're bumping me out for some guy from, I am telling you right now that is a horrible decision right there. On top of all of that, the union or the company is going to be able to say, hey, listen, we can hire these individuals at second tier, meaning that we can manufacture, like, they might not say this to the union, but they're going to say it amongst themselves, that they have in the contract negotiations the ability to hire people in at the very low rates because they're unlocking a third shift. It'll all be negotiated in whatever the current contract is. So those guys will come in, like if they hired, say, 500 people that are not part of the union currently, they would come in at, say, half the wage, the hourly wage, which is a lot of money when you're looking at 500 people over the course of however long. So this is not good business sense. And there's no way in the world that you're going to convince a guy in Brampton to sell his house and move his entire family, let's call it 800 kilometers, to the border with the United States. I mean, at that point, he might as well just keep driving right into Michigan and get a job at one of these factories they're unlocking. But Mark Carney doesn't care what these guys are going through. He only cares that people still like him. That's all. He just wants his approval rating to stay high so that the country won't trigger an election. I'm telling you right now, we need to trigger an election because this guy cannot handle the economic collapse that is coming in, and we need 9 laws to be repealed. And if we can get the conservatives at the bench, they will repeal them, and at least we can get back to work. We've waited so long, there's still going to be some hardships. But we can at least get out in front of it. At this rate, 2 years from now, we are going to be standing at the border with the begging tray saying, please help us, Donald Trump, please help us. On October 15th of 2025, Stats Canada released the numbers for the wholesale releases that typically go down into the States and wholesale trade for August of 2025. So that's August, right? This is the numbers for August, and then we are now in October, so we still haven't seen the destruction that was brought on by September. Wholesale sale excludes petroleum products, and other hydrocarbons, excluding oilseed and grain, declined 1.2%. It went down 1.2% to 85 billion in August. The largest decrease came from the motor vehicle and motor vehicle parts and accessories subsector, down 8.8%. Remember that number, 8.8%. It's significant. I will come back to it. Then we can see in the next paragraph, motor vehicle and motor vehicle parts and accessories post the largest sales decline in August. This is August now. Sales in the motor vehicle and motor vehicle parts and accessory subsector decreased 8.8%, down to $14 billion in August. The decrease was driven by lower sales in the motor vehicle industry group, down 10.7% to $11 million. Now, you might be saying, Sterling, you're throwing too many numbers at me. All I want you to realize is that it's a 10% decrease in the month of August. So we haven't seen September's numbers yet, but in August, it was a 10% decrease at the height of summer. So that indicates to me that the companies in the industry that Donald Trump was encouraging to start in the United States of America, they're going to start with parts first. It's much easier to manufacture a part and an accessory. They're able to remove at least 10% of the market from Canada. They are at least 10% up and running down in the United States in August. Now, because I understand international finance, I know that when Donald Trump triggered that, the added 10% to the tariff, that's because that much industry was up and running in the United States. Not talking about it anymore, right? The buildings are in, the electricity's been run, the building codes have been met, the licenses have been given, and people are manufacturing product. They got a small stockpile. And Donald Trump says, okay, so now we need to add 10% to anything coming in from Canada because I want to sell American. And all the talk you hear about them saying, oh, it's a tax on Americans, and that's all out the window because now they're buying American. And they're buying it for less money than we could send it down there for without the tariff. But just to make sure he's adding 10%. And that's just one of the nuances of the softwood timber argument that's been going on with Canada and the United States for, I don't know, let's call it 50 years. However, when it comes to the auto sector that we were talking about, it's the same thing. In August, there was a 10% decrease in the amount of auto sales coming out of Canada into the United States. Parts and accessories mostly. It's not going to be cars very much. It's going to, because, the new lines for cars launch in the fall, right? So the accessories, though, that was something that was made in Canada because, it's easier to set up a parts manufacturer. So 10% of that, at least, has been taken away from Canada. Now, how much is that going to have been increased when we come through September? If they even went up 4 or 5%, that is a substantial amount of money, billions. And that is a substantial amount of jobs. So in the States, these automotive manufacturers have managed to get down in there, put the building in, put the tooling in, get their hands on the raw material because that's important. That's why that was first. Steel and aluminum was first because it takes a while to get a foundry up and running. You can't just flick a switch. It's not like, turning on a light bulb. It's not like turning on the stove. You got to light a fire, then you got to keep feeding the fire, then you got to wait 3 or 4 weeks, and then you hope that the fire's achieved the heat and sustainable heat. I mean, these foundries are hot. You got to hope that the wires are there. You got to hire the people. You got to get the equipment. But that's taken care of now. So now they have a trickle of raw material coming out so that people can manufacture the parts. They have a trickle of the timber industry up and running so people can manufacture that. And like I told everybody, Donald Trump initiates phase 2. And because Canada's politicians do not want to do anything other than what they've always been doing, because they are not capable, or at least the ones that we have elected are not capable of handling change. They're not capable of overcoming it. They're still fixated on Donald Trump instead of fixating on solving the problem in Canada. Of course, we're not going to get that solution from Mark Carney because he's a environmentalist who benefits from owning oil stock in other countries, who has all of his business down in the United States, but is expecting you and I to live like they do in the third underdeveloped countries. He wants us to go back to the Stone Ages. And then he'll bring in his friends and they will take out all of our resources. And by that point, you won't matter because you will be desperately looking for any kind of cricket you can get your hands on. And he'll be saying, don't worry about it. I can give you this apartment for free, this little shoebox. It's only 47 stories up. And if you're lucky, you can develop a net to catch any of the crickets that got loose. But to get the country up and running, to start companies and businesses and get the taxes out of the way and repeal the 9 laws that are in the way of the development for all of our natural resources. He's not prepared to do that. He's not willing to do that. And Doug Ford is not capable of doing that. The only 2 premiers in the country that are screaming about it are Saskatchewan and Alberta. Everybody else, either they don't know any better or they're fully behind Mark Carney's vision for Canada, which, of course, from where I'm sitting, looks like the complete and utter destruction of the country. It looks like it will be broken down into 10 separate countries. And at that point, it'll only be, the 51st, the 52nd, 53rd, 54th. We have to get the Liberal government out of the way. We have to remove those laws that are in the way. And the only way we are going to do that is to put in a government that is prepared to do that. You can let me know what you think down in the comments. I'm going to wrap here. Thank you for listening. I'll talk to you next time.